and they're like looking in, and they're maybe not so developed in like the whole like philosophy of it all, and you start to say, oh, fucking statists and fascists and mafias, they like kind of like, you know, they're like, oh wow, this is some hyperbole, you know, and they really like
that's what they are,
but they're like brainwashed.
Who are you?
My name's Amir Taaki.
What are you?
My spirit animal is VELOCIRAPTOR.
Why are you an anarchist?
I'm not really an anarchist, you know, maybe I kind of like come from that culture, you know, well, I'm from the internet, hello, I'm from the internet, but also I kind of feel like these dividing lines, like, oh, left, right, I think I've also gone past ideology and dogma.
Yeah.
It's like more, there are real things to solve and look at the things, but it's also, I'm an anti-fascist, I guess. Like, you know, if you go in anarchism, you have like anarcho-capitalist, anarcho-communist, you have like all the ideologies inside anarchism. So it's kind of like, it's like the same sort of thing. Instead, I want to get away from ideology and labels. I want to see a shift in more about our values and our ethics, what kind of things that we want to promote, you know, responsibility, you know, doing things cooperatively, you know, I don't know, just those types of ideals. When you talk, you avoid to go into specific, you know, I'm this or certain camps, but instead talk about like, what is it that you want to promote, or what do you want to grow, you know? And people who maybe wouldn't see themselves as that can attach themselves to your ideas and be able to take those on and, like a seed in their mind, unpack over several years and grow until it roots itself in their belief system.
I'm all about the seeding factor. On my banner I say, I use the term anarchy because I almost feel like I need to label this movement or this consensus or something, but I say I want anarchy to stay in people's minds and to drip down into their hearts. So,
yeah, the heart is very important.
Yeah.
But also it's kind of like a lot of these ideologies or old, you know, kind of dogmas were like made for an older time, but we're in a different time now. And that's why also we need to actually like challenge our assumptions and maybe discard some of the older notions, and really reevaluate things like based on criteria of if they work, you know, like, is this actually something that is producing results? And if not, try a different idea, use the scientific method to really gain some progress. There's a lot of ideas in this movement that have been around for a long time and is just holding us back, you know, like for instance the consensus-driven decision making. It's like been around since the 60s and produced nothing of value. It's nonsense. But the open source is different. The open source is about individuals working for the common good. And this, well, it's interesting, you know, it's not only this or that way of doing things. If you look in open source world, there's all different projects with different cultures or different ways that they operate as well, and each of these different methods has different trade-offs, different advantages. And if we truly want to construct alternative systems, then we need to actually think about that actually there is no perfect answer, you know, but we certainly can do better than what exists. And that's why the CIC, the Catalan Integral Cooperativa, which the website is cooperativa.cat, is interesting because they don't say like, oh, we're making an alternative system. They say we're giving people tools of transition, and so they're equipping people with tools that if they want to transition to something else, that they can use to construct their vision.
Would you say we should approach things from the bottom up instead of the top down?
yeah, that's the only way that we're going to be able to serve ourselves, you know. Yeah. In the end of the day, if there's some guy and, you know, he's gonna be with his friends, assist his friends first before he assists his region, then his nation state, you know, then all the nation states around him, and then the planet comes last, you know. And we as the people are at the bottom of that kind of hierarchy, with all the bankers and the corporations and all the different mafias and groups together at the most highest levels. If you really want something that serves people, it has to come from the people. That's the only way it's going to happen. Like, people talk about, like, oh, but who's going to look after me, you know? Like, you are going to look after you. Like, it's like a much more, you know, stronger vision of, like, of how you can live. Like, you taking charge of your life, you know, not depending on someone else or placating before others.
So what do you think that would eventually... that is the real definition of, because I find the word common good, it's an abstract term, because each individual will have its own perception of what a common good is. So if each individual is working towards their own benefit without hurting anyone else, would that accumulate in a common good?
No, it's not only about, like, claiming your sovereignty, that we are doing the things like this and fuck the other guy. But it's also about working with the other people, because it's very easy, yeah, to say, okay, I wanna improve my life, and then you start to say, okay, so I need more money to improve my living standard, and so you start to go and do the things and end up, you know, owning the means of production. Owning people as employees, becoming a capitalist, and, you know, fucking the other guys. But if instead we put our minds together and we think, okay, how can we do the things better, then we can live better. And what's better than to be with my friends around me, and all my friends are happy, and we're together thinking how to live, having fun, doing activities that grow you as a person, not sit in front of the TV and waste away, but, like, you know, making video, doing art, programming, studying the nature, like travel, you know, build. It's way better, you know, rather than just isolate myself and look inwards, you know. As it's like the same thing with there's a lot of people into technology, and they have, like, this massive skill that they can use to really, like, transform the social landscape. They can, you know, delete entire industries. They can overthrow totalitarian regimes. Like, really, it's like they have, like, a nuclear bomb, but a lot of them just squander their skill and waste it. Technology is a tool that equips people, you know, and as technologists you have to think, like, who am I serving? Am I being a mercenary to the highest bidder for the corporations, working for them just to gain money? And it ends up that a lot of people end up working jobs that's against their self-interest, you know, to get money, to live. And it's not the best way that things could be, or a lot of other, or making toys. It's so inward looking. Like, what about your mother or your friends, or you know, it doesn't always have to be that starving kid in Africa. It's just the people around you, you know. When the Alexandrian Library existed, they had high science, high technology, philosophy, astronomy, and they studied the world around them, and had the whole resource of the world's knowledge there at the time. But the common people despised them, hated them, because they were just elites in their place, using their skill. And these scientists never thought, how could I improve the life of the common man who's working in the fields? They used the steam technology, not to make tractors, but to make toys to amuse kings. And for me, that's such an insular way to live or to do the things. You know, there's a lot we can do, and this whole philosophy of the liberalism is always based on fear. You know, like, oh, what if I don't have someone looking after me? How am I going to live? Like, who's going to be in charge of my security, my healthcare? You know, that I'm going to be left alone in this huge, uncaring universe. But, you know, that is how the universe really is. And, you know, just like throughout whole of history, when people were so scared to face up to truth that they would recede into like, you know, this into this perspective where the human is at the center of the universe, you know, protected, you know, like in a world where natural disaster can strike at any time, where the universe is so massive with the stars and you're a tiny person, you know, sometimes it can be very easy to want to have someone who will protect you and care for you, who will look after you, and that you can pray to when you have your troubles, you know. But really, like, that's not how the world is, you know. So then how do we look at the things, and how do we what perspective do we take? Well, we are the custodians of life's meaning. You know, we yearn to seek a purpose. We yearn to understand why we're here. But the reality is that we make our purpose.
What is the symbolic meaning of Bitcoin for you?
Bitcoin is cool as fuck. Bitcoin is really cool. I love it. Like that we have a money that is declared sovereign and is by the people, and that it can never be claimed, and this is a tool that we can use, that we can construct the systems amongst ourselves. It doesn't matter that, like, some billionaire owns this amount of bitcoins or this guy's doing this. It's often like you can look at what other people are doing and get trapped in your own mind. But if you're always looking outside, you know, then you're always going to be worrying, and it's far better to focus on what you can do, and that's why Bitcoin is fantastic. It gives you the power, the empowerment, like, and we're using it in our projects, and we're thriving for it. Like, we've been moneyless hippies for more than a decade, but now we have Bitcoin, and now we can use it to fund open source, to fund autonomous communities that we can use to help activist people or constructive people who's actually working for change to build better things. The CIC is using it, you know. That's what it's about. Like, it's about our sovereignty as free people.
What would you say to those who shout, "Prove anarchy works"?
Move on. Like, let them fester. I have nothing to prove. I'm doing my thing, you know, and you know, with other people as well that want to join with us. You know, I believe in open spaces. I always try to be open, and we try to make the things that is inclusive, because the more of us that are together, the stronger we are. But for people who don't want to be part of that, fine. You know, that's okay. We're all different people on this earth with different motives, and when you really, like, look at the things, that it's not like there's good or bad people. It's more tricky than that. It's very easy sometimes to point the finger at this or that guy. Or, you know, I remember in one squat that I was in, there was a kettle, and people kept taking it upstairs, you know, to the floor they were on, you know. But it's not like it's not malicious. They're not stealing the kettle. It's just there's a lack of a kettle there, you know. So it's like it's kind of like, but then you have this issue that people start to believe that things should be some way, you know, and they start to believe, they start to be so locked in their mode of thought and so intolerant of different perspectives that it starts to become a matter of, well, who is not like me. I think, yeah, that there is a lot of moralizing, that there is a lot of this, you know, and it happens even in activist communities, that you have the General Assembly, and people start to use this central power structure in order to enforce their beliefs on the others. People start to take minor issues, start grandstanding in front of the crowd, building up support, and it's a political structure. Some of these types of people who build up these very elaborate models about how the society functions, with like, you know, like, oh, the people would do this, and then there'd be this, and it's like a utopia. It's too perfect, you know. But the reality is that people is very different, and people is irrational, and you can't model the human beings. You know, what you can do though is like look around you, and what are the objective things that you can do as a person. Nation states are getting together and making bigger and bigger consortiums. You know, the decision making is moving upwards, more and more red tape. The police state is getting massive. The police is a group of guys basically doing things how they see is right, and saying like, oh, that's a good business that pays taxes. We like those guys. We're going to support those guys, but not those businesses. They're not paying taxes. They're not good guys. We don't like those. They're bad for our community. They need to be stopped. And these activist people stopping us doing our work, we need to shut them down. They need to be stopped. And then looking at their list of tools that they have, their list of laws and legislation, and seeing what they can use to stop the bad guys. And then when they don't have the tools, making stuff up. The police break the laws all the time. I've had places where we've been and the police has broken in illegally, arrested my friends for assault when they did nothing, confiscate all the cameras we're filming them on. I've had police, you know, there's punched me, that's arrested me for just being, for just not consenting, for questioning my rights as a citizen when they've tried to push me around. I've seen police that's pointed shotguns at protests, you know, as a way of threatening, and you know, like in a different time or period where they would have more levy, they would be the guys that would actually pull the trigger, and the surveillance state is growing massively. The NSA, it comes out, like when the Snowden stuff first come out, I was like, fantastic, like this is stuff we'd been saying for a long time that's been happening, and now it's actually come out into the open. But with each and more revelations, gets more and more crazy than I ever imagined. Like they're doing dragnet surveillance operations, flying drones over entire neighborhoods. They're actually beaming energy into people's bodies to activate devices to intercept, you know, to intercept images on monitors. This is like crazy stuff, you know, and it's not targeted surveillance, it's dragnet surveillance. So if they're doing dragnet surveillance on huge swaths of the population, such as in France, where there was 60 million phone calls intercepted in a month alone, and 70 million in Spain, you know, and this is just a normal month, you know, like, who is the real enemy, you know, and what is this situation that they're gearing up for, you know, and it's really like, and meanwhile, for normal people who's working jobs, you know, their pay is going down, They're working longer hours, doing jobs they increasingly hate. And for what? For a box in the city, you know, to pay their rent and their bills. If you know, it's not sustainable, you know. And it might be tempting, yeah, to think, okay, you know, I'm just gonna get my place and look after myself, but it's not the future, you know. That's why we really need to start putting our minds together and thinking, how can we do the things that can work in the future for us, you know, and carve out a niche where freedom-loving people can survive and thrive. The earth has been stolen from us. We don't own our land anymore. Like, who said that this section of the earth, which owns by the Queen of England, belongs to the Queen? She went and took it and put the armies there, and she's not using it, she's not living on it right there. So who says it's hers? Why, if some homeless guy, or if someone goes and takes that space and makes productive use? We took in London 5 houses in January owned by the Queen. We occupy it, we live in it, like over 40 people living there, all different activist people from Occupy. I was there programming, and in the end they come to evict it with 2 helicopters, 5 riot police vans, 3 riot police teams, block off the entire street of traffic, tons of police everywhere, 2 climbing teams, ambulance. You know, it was a 12-hour eviction that cost hundreds of thousands of pounds. You know, and what? These properties have been empty for over 10 years. And to evict the people who are living there, so the Queen can have it sit empty in her account and make her more rich. Like, that's and we're a democracy, yeah? And yet we have monarchy. Like, what are we gonna have? Like, we have princes, we're gonna have wizards and dragons and
people with it's symbolic. It's not symbolic. Obviously.
Yeah, it's symbolic, what about liberty and justice?
Us, right?
There's a bit more than the GDP of a country because it attracts some tourists, which is an argument that people make, and I think is very, and I'm not even sure it's a proper argument, but you know, if it's attracting those kinds of tourists, yeah, maybe I don't even want those kind of people in my country, you know, that like come and take pictures of the Queen and the Parliament and give money to the banks and the bourgeois businesses and keep supporting a situation which is more of the same.
I'm going to give you a series of statements. Respond to them in any way you like. Anarchy is order.
Or disorder, yeah.
Chaos begets freedom.
Yeah, chaos is cool. I love a good party, yeah.
Internet is anarchy.
The internet is the greatest experiment in anarchy that the world has ever known. We can look at human history as a ever expanding steps of consciousness. In the beginning, your allegiances were maybe to your band or your tribe, you know, the restless few that you were wandering across the landscape with, and then it became the people in your towns, the people in your nation states, and now with the internet we have the ability, you know, to expand our circle of love.
It's just the people now.
With people around the world. Like, I was reading a blog post by the director of the BBC, Director General, and he was saying that nowadays that a lot of our culture, the old culture of our society, that the young uns are now producing their own culture or finding their own culture, and that it was sad that this Christian culture is being left behind because, You know, people aren't understanding references in Monty Python. You know, like there's been a loss in this. You know, that we're losing the biblical, Latin, educated, you know, kind of thing. But what is cooler than to be on the internet and to find your own culture that suits you as a person and link up with those people and grow it, and then it serves you. That's beautiful.
Fight fire with fire.
You know, I think the non-violent action, yeah, you know, well, it's like this idea that you can always be pacifist is a bit dreamy. You know, I obviously, like with a guy that's got like massive guns and stuff, you're living in a fantasy if you think you can take your little pea shooter and bam bam bam, like fight all the mercenaries. You know, you have to be smarter about how you do the things, but in the end, as sovereign people, when you declare yourself, you know, and you're there doing your thing, and some other guy comes, some jackbooted thug, to impose his vision on you, you know, it's entirely legitimate to lop off his head or put a bullet in him, you know, and all of these mafias who's you know, waging wars, murdering kids with the drones, sitting in the place, like on the computer terminal, you know. And I'm not talking about the guys who operate the drones. I'm talking about the guys who take the human resource and assign it on this mission and move like their pieces on the chessboard. Those motherfuckers need to be murdered. Lop off their heads for all I care, you know. Those people are psychopaths. Because Chairman Mao used to call the Chinese people his little ants. And that's how they see us, as little ants to be traded and hoarded.
Lastly, arise, you have nothing to lose but your barbed wire fences.
Yeah, well, it's like, you know, often you go through the life and you have a vision of how the things should be, or what you want to do, your passion, but then the reality hits you, and people start to think, oh, you know, and the more fear that you have, the more that you become worried about the things, the more you start to have to compromise. You know, that I need to actually get a job, I need to, you know, I might need to like pay for this, or, you know, but the more that you step away from your dreams, the further they become, and the more tempting it becomes also to step even further away. And that is how people often end up, very far away from where they want to be. But the more steps you take, and it's not easy in the beginning, it's very difficult, but the more that you strive in the purity of your vision, the more the things become clear, and the more it becomes easier. You find other people around you, you network one with the other, and eventually, and it's you know, it's a continual journey throughout your whole life. It's not only about the actions you take, but also about yourself, how you grow as a person, you know, why you do the things, like also the stripping away these layers so we can become better people that are more true to ourselves. And, you know, being a good person is not the same as being a nice person. You know, there's a lot of things in being a good person that's very, very deep, you know. And I'm not saying I'm not a good person, you know. I'm also corrupted and impure, but I try to take the steps to improve, you know, because I feel that's the only way that I'm going to fulfill myself as a person.
Awesome. If you want to say anything else.
Well, I can go on for hours. You know,
That's good.
Humans start off now when the world is changing. Animals died and humans tried to start explaining. We're so wise now, we're so wise. We're so wise now, we're so wise.